Finding a creative way to reposition an iconic Uptown Phoenix restaurant baffled area developers.
So many people made a run at it to try to figure out what do you do with it.
Beefeaters was classic Phoenix, home to countless celebrations and events. It's where politicians met and business deals that shaped the city were struck in the dimly lit Old English prime rib house.
I grew up around here. I grew up a few blocks to the west. I went to Central High School and sort of intrigued because I remember this place in its heyday in the 70s and 80s when it was thriving. The city wanted to preserve the building because of its scale, because of its story, its heritage, and Phoenix's history.
The city tapped Venue Projects, a local urban redevelopment group that had recently completed another project in the area, to come take a look.
I was sort of curious to see what it was like, and we came in here and it was like it just stopped in time.
The redevelopment process started with community outreach.
All these people started coming out of the woodwork sharing stories of experiences they had here. It was just kind of like, if you're a local, you could relate to it, and we thought, wow, what a neat opportunity to create something here that says something about Central Phoenix and our mid-century heritage.
A plan to revive what the Beefeaters once was, a community gathering place where people came together around food and entertainment, started to emerge in what would be called the Newton, in honor of the restaurant's late owner.
This building was about 16,000 square feet, and that was a restaurant and banquet facility, some meeting rooms, and this tavern. The sweet spot for restaurants here now is about anywhere from 2,500 to 5,000 square feet for urban restaurants. So what do you do with the rest of the building? We just put together a plan that basically took the whole, fragmented it into a collection of smaller spaces in this sort of synergistic relationship.
The vision really came into focus when landmark Phoenix bookstore Changing Hands reached out.
They reached out to us and said, hey, would you consider working with us to find a second location? We have this crazy idea of creating a place where we can have a bookstore. We'd like to have a beer, wine, and coffee bar inside our bookstore, and we'd like to be with other creative retailers and create a synergy and create a community gathering place.
It would be the perfect fit. Venue asked the bookstore operator if they would consider being the anchor tenant of its new development.
Started with them, and they came in and they saw the potential and really the spin and how exciting it would be for the city.
Inside Changing Hands' newest location would be First Draft, making the bookstore a bar as well.
We curate our tenants like art because it's really about the synergies. So we sat down with Changing Hands, started with them and said, okay, who would be ideal to come in here? We need a restaurant.
Next to come on board was restaurant Southern Rail, the second concept of up-and-coming Phoenix chef Justin Beckett.
They were sort of enamored by its potential, and they just walked through and you could just see it on their faces. They were excited.
Southwest Gardner was next to sign on.
I often refer to them as the Changing Hands of the home and garden world because they are active programmers.
Southwest Gardner took over what was the Beefeaters kitchen with Changing Hands in the once restaurant and Beckett's Southern Rail restaurant facing Camelback Road. Changing Hands' business consultant also wanted in on the project and leased a back meeting room, but the banquet hall and several other meeting rooms were still unspoken for.
We had to figure out with the bankers, how do you position all that space and it's not leasable space? So it was a pretty interesting development problem. And so we started bringing in event and meeting planners into the building while we were building it. And all of them were saying, oh my God, this is fitting a niche in Phoenix that's missing. It's a small scale, it's kind of funky, it's activated.
Events programming would become the fifth and final tenant with a full-time operations and management staff.
The number of events that we run through here weekly and monthly are pretty amazing. The diversity is pretty wild.
University, educational events, book signings, community meetings, concert series, with local artists curating on the walls.
Really the underlying big mission and the vision was create a community gathering space and reinvent this property as a modern day reinterpretation of what Beefeaters once was.
The tenants in the Newton are also partners in the project.
We all had skin in the game. So everybody, city, us, our tenants, everyone was emotionally invested in it, and that's how we got it done. I knew doing this work would be meaningful and fulfilling for me on a personal level. I think the biggest surprise is how impactful it is on community.
With better lighting throughout the project, Beefeater's regulars might notice the memorable bar and fireplace in the same places.
We thought this building was a post and beam building, and when we peeled it open, we were excited to find that it actually has a very complex custom truss system. We certainly could have demoed it and filled a landfill and built a new soulless building like we have everywhere here in Phoenix, or we could work with the nuance of this funky old building that had texture and patina to it.
The development team attributes the success of the Newton to staying true to their core values.
Opportunities aren't going to become the challenge. It's staying focused and true to our mission. We knew we were going to embark on a mission-driven business model, and so we condensed it down to 3 words: create, inspire, and serve. And we often use that to measure opportunity, and it's a good gut check for ourselves. I can see why a lot of the old-time developers will say, there's a gut feel on some of this stuff too, and especially if you're developing prototype things, you got to really weigh the quantitative with the qualitative. I've got to be willing to risk capital and get a return on that money always, but at the same note, if we just focus on the quantitative, we'd never do these projects because they're kind of tight. But then when you look at them after the fact, the lessons learned is that they can so outperform what you originally thought they could do, because you're bringing something creative and unique and something that people love. They fall in love with, and so they patronize it.